Hi, welcome to Mycogen Silage Field Tour. We're in northern Indiana at the farm of David Herr Dairy, and we're at a strip trial, and we're going to talk a little bit about the hybrids. My name is Mark Reel. I'm a regional agronomy leader for the Eastern region. And
I'm Amanda Guffnett. I am the commercial agronomist for Michigan and northern Indiana. Am I in the camera?
Yep. There we go. Amanda, we're talking about a couple full season hybrids here that are going to fit into this area. They're going to be a little bit more full season. We've used TMF 2L825. How would you position that from a soil perspective?
TMF 2L825 is a little bit better on the well-drained soils, so more of a sandy soil area. I would keep it out of any clay or poorly drained areas.
Okay. We're going to be making that into a smart stacks, and that'll be called TMF 17L86. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. The other things about that is, what about the disease package on that one? Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Disease package is pretty good on that one.
Yeah.
It's decent in northern corn leaf blight and gray leaf spot.
Okay. So it's got fairly good drought tolerance. It's a full flex ear type, so from a positioning standpoint, we don't really need to go really high populations. More moderate to moderate high seems to work real well. You know, somewhere between 28 and 32,000 seems to work best, depending on what soils. You can go a little bit lower than that. Apparently the geese like it as well, so it's a good timing. So, but I also think it makes a good companion corn with another new hybrid that we have, which is TMF 14L46. What can you tell us about soils on that one, Amanda?
Soils on that one, it's a little more variable, so it can go across more soil types. It can handle wet feed a little bit better, and it's just easier to place.
Yeah, it tends to have a little bit better root system to it, and so it basically can permeate into wetter, colder soils, and so it gives us the ability to be able to plant it into a soil environment. And if we look at how the stalks and the roots compare, you can see that it's got more of a penetrating root system. You've got a fibrous root system for our other hybrids, and in this one you can see these longer extended roots that go down deeper into the soil profile, seem to give it more stability in that wet soil environment versus some of our other hybrids, which tend to be more fibrous up on the surface. And so I think from that perspective, the TMF 14L46 is going to have a real good fit, especially for customers that were looking for something to replace our TMF 2H918 and 919, which seem to be really good hybrids across variable soils, good drought tolerance, could handle the poorly drained. I think we've got something now that actually does fit. So we've got a good companion hybrid here. All right. We're kind of moving to what we call, I guess I come from a livestock background. I don't know about you, Amanda, but
I come from cash crops. So.
Okay. Well, I usually do things in pairs, and that's just from learning to go into livestock shows all the time. And obviously with silage being a livestock kind of crop, this is kind of what we call our middleweight pair. In a sense, we've got two really good hybrids right around 112 to 113 day, and what we've got is TMF 2H747, which has been our predominantly highly productive soils. What do you want to talk about relative to soils with that one? I guess we'll talk, but I don't think we really like it for wet feed. Is that correct?
No, we do not like that one for wet feed.
Yeah. We want to have good fertility, good management. What about populations on that one? How do you feel?
Populations, keep that one below 32,000. I would not go above 32,000 for populations on that.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those that does really well on better soils, good fertility and stuff. You'll usually do well. It doesn't quite have the height of some of our fuller season corns, but it puts on a lot of big starchy ear, so a lot of better starch content for that hybrid. And then we go to TMF 2R737. How would you place that one, Amanda?
That one is better for poorly drained soils. So anywhere you have a little bit of water standing, a little less drainage, place that hybrid there.
And I do think it's all similar to that 14L46, the fuller season version. It does tend to be able to handle the poorly drained as well as some light sands, but just as we saw here where we've had a lot of excess water during the vegetative stage, now the plants are showing a little bit higher nitrogen use demand, and that's typical of all of our silage corns. They'll typically want a lot more nitrogen. And it's not to say that there's not nitrogen out here. We know Dave puts plenty of manure on this, but it may be the fact that it's a shallower root system, even with the more aggressive root systems. But we see a little more tip back with the 737 on the lighter sands versus on the heavier clays. And so there's a little better drought tolerance with the 747 versus the 737. But both really good companion hybrids again. 747 for the more productive ground, 737 for the more variable ground. Agreed?
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so now we're kind of talking about some early corns for northern Indiana. We're in the 110-day category, so we've got a couple hybrids here that we use pretty extensively. They're both Refuge Advanced materials, which are?
Refuge Advance already has the refuge in the bag, and that is a 5% refuge.
Yeah, so it's a 95% smart stacks with a 5% refuge in there. We've got TMF 2R720, which is about 110 day, and then TMF 2H706, 109 day. They're relatively close. The 720 actually gives us probably longer, the flexier ear, so guys looking at earlage, probably gives us a little more ear to work with, but it is also one that if you push it into what I call poorly drained or wet drained, you can have problems with that big shanky ear actually being too big.
With eardrop?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
So we need to manage the populations back. Again, what are we talking relative to populations for these two?
Definitely under 32,000. Keep it
Yeah.
under 32,000.
Again, full flex ear types, we want to manage those populations based on how we're doing it in there. They can go into medium populations, so you can take them down, I think, even to the upper 20s, and they'll still really do well. Fairly decent plant structure, good stalk stability and stalks, but we do want to, how do we want to manage relative to soils?
Relative to soils, again, just place them on the medium to highly productive ground and keep them out of the water. So if it's poorly drained, keep them out of poorly drained areas.
So we want to manage them relative to the soil types is basically they'll handle the more variable soils. We kind of feel like medium soil types to higher fertility is where they're going to actually shine and where they'll show themselves. So you can put them into sandier soils, good drought tolerance for both of them. Would say the 720 probably a little better than 706 if I get in real droughty soils, but then I would manage those populations down a lot. Now in northern Indiana we usually have the ability to be able to put some water onto things, so we don't worry quite as much about it. But relative to all the hybrids that we talked about relative to TMFs, I guess the question will come up. Dave plants a lot of TMF 2L825, which is a fuller season corn, and relative to tonnage, that's done very well for him, upper 20s for here in northern Indiana. So we know that if we can go to the fuller seasons, you usually can do it. But the big thing about silage or any of them is it's nice to have a full spectrum of TMF hybrids to be able to go to be able to spread out my cutting schedule and workload, so when we're packing it, we're doing it, and we can maintain our moistures. All right?
All right.
Sounds good. Thanks. Hi, we're back here on the herd dairy, and we're talking a little bit about our BMR corns that are going to be either new for this year or new in the lineup. And a couple of these are fuller season. We haven't had these with some full traits. F2F 817 is 116 day, and it is a smart stacks that we had actually introduced last year, but didn't have a lot of seed supply, but this year we'll have a lot more, right? Keep
Hopefully.
our fingers crossed.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also have BMR 14B96. They're going to be nice additions for Indiana because of why?
Well, mainly because of how well they handle the soils. So you can place these in both, like medium to highly productive areas, and just make sure that they are better drained. They don't really like a lot of wet feed.
Yeah,
So
I think the 14B96 can handle the wet feed a little better than the 817. So we try to keep the 817 on, under the pivots, in the better ground, the higher tonnage. The nice thing about both of them, I think, is the disease package, right?
Yes, disease package. They have a great disease package for BMRs, northern corn leaf blight and gray leaf spot.
Yeah, so both of these probably have better disease packages. I will say the 14B96 still going to require at least a minimum of one fungicide, but the F2F817, in a pinch you could probably get by, but in Indiana we're going to make a recommendation, especially with any BMRs, to make sure that you're putting the fungicide on. These two basically do have the best disease package out of any of the BMRs that we've introduced. Again, both smart stacks, both available fully traded materials that do offer us a lot of flexibility to be able to use for the farm. So we've got a good full season pair here. All right?
Yes, we do.
All right. Now we're with some of the early season BMRs, and we decided to move kind of this direction to be some of the earlier ones that we sell in Indiana. We're right around 110 day, 109 to 110 day. We have F2F627, which is our early 109 day BMR, and it's probably our #1 BMR. It's offered as a Smart Stacks RA, so it comes in the bag with the refuge, so it's got the 95-5 blend. And I think one of the things that we want to point out with the BMRs is the digestibility difference that they have. One of the things that you can pick up is Amanda's holding a BMR, so you can see it in the stalk, the brownish color, versus this is one of our typical TMFs, and you can see, just like every grain corn that's out there and all those others, it has that greenish stalk. This is the marker gene that exists at the BMR, and that gives us the ability, and with the BMR event that we use, which is the BM3, it has the higher digestibility, almost 10 to 12 points higher than a typical grain corn, or 8 to 10 points better than even our better TMFs from a NDFD skit, which is basically nutrient detergent fiber digestibility. And so we know that this has that ability to produce more milk. So for every point that we get, you know what they reference, it's about a half a pound more milk, right?
Half a pound more. Wow.
So we're basically gaining, now they've had over 22 studies, and we're up over 5 pounds of milk gain per day feeding a BMR versus some of these dual purpose or even our TMFs. So
well, that's a no-brainer why growers would want a BMR then.
Yeah, well, there's also a way that you can convince yourself. Okay, Amanda? So what's one of the other ways is just to take a bite of that.
It's very sweet.
Yeah. And you can see with the stalks that there's a little bit difference in the stalk. These are almost like straws, whereas the sugar is still inside that stalk with that one. So this is actually drying out. There's little or no flavor whatsoever. So the BMR definitely has a little better flavor. But let's get back to our hybrids and our placement. F2F627, variable soils, good drought tolerance, has the ability to grow across a large amount of environments. Good early season for Indiana, more full season as you go north. Has been one of our top silage hybrids again, and also our #1 BMR. This year we're introducing the BMR 10B27. Placement's going to be what? Similar to?
Very, very similar to the 627.
Okay. A little bit better disease package, not a lot. So it does have good placement down here in Indiana, where we're talking at least 2 sprays with the F2F627. Probably going to still require 2 sprays.
More than likely, yes, especially in a wet year.
Okay. So we're going to talk about doing that early application between V5 and V8.
Yes.
And then coming back with that second application at tasseling or
tassel.
post-tassel. Yeah. So both of them are going to be pretty good hybrids relative to what we're doing. We do think long-term the BMR 10B27 RA is going to be a good replacement here in Indiana. And we think that it's going to have a lot of potential. A little bit slower out of the ground. The F2F627 is our best hybrid out of the ground for the BMRs. So both of them will be fairly good on placement. None of them necessarily, any of the BMRs again, really are intended to be placed in poorly drained environment soils, but they can go through that soil environment and more rolling ground, better fertility, better management. That's the BMR. Okay.
Okay.
Hi. So we're back with the middle pair of what we call kind of probably our weaker pair in Indiana, but we have we have one really good replacement hybrid, but we had a hybrid in F2F 714 that we sold this year as F2F 716 that really doesn't have a good disease tolerance package here for Indiana. Literally had people spray it as many as 3 times and still had disease in it. So never really had the true fit, but it was a nice product just to be able to offer a couple here for fuller season. But now we've got some really good full package of BMRs for Indiana, so we've got some better materials for the zone, don't you think?
We do, yes.
Yeah. Now we are adding a BMR 12B75, which is basically like 112-day what?
It's like the 627.
Okay.
So
Variable soils, about the same disease package. Again, going to require the 2 passes for fungicide.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to have the ability to be able to do that relative to the environment. Be able to offer something as a 627, the BMR 12B75, and then go to our fuller season silages that are here for the BMR for the full season package. So now we can spread out the workload. Again, still the better digestibility package, right? NDFD, so better in that sense. But placement-wise, again, very similar. Variable soils seems to be consistent. Very tall plant structure, not quite the disease package we need to be able to get away without any fungicides. Probably a 2-pass, but we want to move away from the F2F 714, 716s, which just doesn't handle the gray leaf spot and
northern corn leaf blight
that we always have here in Indiana. So I think we've got a good full line of BMRs. We do have the ability to be able to spread out risk for our customers and be able to sell a full line of products that work for Indiana and places the north, right?
Exactly.